The notification landed in Sandra's inbox at 4:03 a.m. on a Sunday. It wasn't an urgent client request. It was a system alert from the company's HR portal. Your position as VP of Operations has been declared redundant, effective immediately. Access to corporate systems will be revoked at 5 a.m. Sandra sat up in the dark, her heart hammering against her ribs. This had to be a mistake. She wasn't just the VP. She was the architect of the company's entire logistical network. She had built the system that saved them from bankruptcy 5 years ago. She grabbed her laptop. It was 4:05 a.m. She had 55 minutes. She logged in, her fingers flying. The redundancy notice was real, but that wasn't what stopped her breath. Attached to her personnel file was a new document, uploaded only an hour prior by the CEO himself, Elias Thorne. It was a performance review filled with fabrications, missed deadlines that never existed, client complaints from accounts she hadn't touched in years. It was a calculated, meticulously crafted hit piece designed to deny her severance and tarnish her reputation across the entire industry. Then she saw the final email. It was sent from Elias's private account to a competitor CEO. Subject: the Sandra problem. Solved. Body: the path is clear. She's out. The intellectual property transfer is scheduled for Monday. My new VC partners are thrilled we shed the baggage. Baggage. That's what he called 15 years of loyalty. That's what he called the woman who had sacrificed countless hours with her children to build his empire. She wasn't just fired. She was being erased and framed so Elias could sell her life's work for a quick cash injection. At 4:59 a.m., Sandra didn't scream. She didn't cry. She downloaded one single encrypted file to a personal thumb drive. At 5 a.m., her screens went black. The Monday morning sun felt alien to Sandra. Usually, at 8 a.m., she was already 2 coffees deep, managing global shipping routes. Today, she was in her kitchen, making pancakes for her confused teenagers, Lily and Sam, who hadn't seen her cook on a weekday since they were toddlers. "Mom, are you okay? You look intense," Lily asked, eyeing her mother cautiously. "I'm fine, sweetie. Just a change in schedule," Sandra lied smoothly. She felt anything but fine. A cold, hard knot of fury had replaced her stomach. She had spent the last hour reviewing the encrypted files she'd saved. It wasn't company data. It was her own personal creation, the Atlas Protocol. Years ago, when Elias demanded she build a system that was too big to fail, Sandra took him literally. She designed a deeply integrated autonomous network that managed everything from supplier payments to real-time inventory tracking. But Sandra knew Elias. She knew his greed. So she built a failsafe, a ghost in the machine. Atlas wasn't just an automated system. It was a dependent one. It required a unique encrypted digital handshake every 72 hours, a handshake that only Sandra's personal biometric signature could provide. Elias hadn't just fired his architect. He had locked himself inside a building with a ticking bomb, and he had thrown away the only key. He thought he had 72 hours to sell her work to the competitor. He was wrong. He had less than 24 hours before the first layer of the Atlas Protocol realized its creator was gone and initiated its primary defense sequence. Sandra poured syrup on the pancakes. The war had begun, and the first shot wouldn't be fired with the lawyer, but with the single line of orphaned code. Elias Thorne strode into the boardroom at 9 a.m., exuding the confidence of a man who had just executed a perfect coup. His new venture capital partners were waiting, eager to finalize the acquisition of Sandra's logistical network. "Gentlemen," Elias beamed, "the transition is complete. The baggage has been handled. The intellectual property is ready for transfer." He projected the live system dashboard onto the massive screen. It showed a sprawling, complex web of green lights, global supply chains humming along perfectly. Impressive, Elias, the lead VC said. Your former VP was talented. A shame she, couldn't keep up with the company's vision. Elias chuckled. Some people are builders, not scalers. We need fresh energy. At 9:15 a.m., a single red light blinked on the dashboard. A minor shipping hub in Rotterdam reported a customs documentation error. Elias waved it off. A glitch, IT will handle it. At 9:30 a.m., 3 more red lights appeared. Dubai, Singapore, and Los Angeles were reporting synchronized failures in their automated payment processing systems. Elias's smile faltered. He texted his new IT director, a 20-something wonderkind named Jax, who had replaced Sandra. Fix it, now. Jax's reply was instantaneous and panicked. I can't get in. The system is locking down. It's asking for a level 1 override. That's Sandra's clearance. Elias stared at the screen as the green web began to turn red, node by node. The sale wasn't happening today. In fact, if they didn't fix this within hours, the entire company would grind to a halt. He realized with a sickening jolt that he hadn't just fired Sandra. He had declared war on the only person who knew how to fly the plane he was currently crashing. Sandra was folding laundry when her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. She knew it was Elias. She answered on the third ring, her voice calm, almost bored. This is Sandra. What did you do? He hissed, foregoing any pleasantries. The panic in his voice was sweet nectar. I'm folding my son's soccer uniforms, Elias. What are you doing? Don't play games with me. The entire Asian supply chain just went offline. Rotterdam is held up. Jack says the system is demanding your override code. Fix it, Sandra. Now. I can't do that, Elias. I don't work there anymore. Remember? I was redundant. Baggage. Listen to me, he snarled. I will bury you. I will release that performance review to every headhunter on the continent. You'll never work again. I'll sue you for sabotage. Sabotage implies action, Sandra said coldly. I haven't done anything. That system is doing exactly what I programmed it to do. Protect itself from unauthorized users. You fired the only authorized user. Silence stretched on the line. What do you want? Elias asked, finally asking, his voice strangled. I'm glad you asked, Sandra said. Check your personal email. She hung up. Elias opened his email on his phone. There was a message from Sandra. Subject, consulting agreement. Attached was a contract. It was 1 page. Term, indefinite. Role, external logistics consultant. Rate, $5,000 per hour. Minimum 10 hours billed daily. Retainer, $500,000 payable immediately in cryptocurrency. Clause 1. Full and public retraction of the defamatory performance review. Clause 2. Sandra's personal legal fees will be covered by the company. Elias stared at the screen. She wasn't asking for her job back. She was asking for a ransom, and the hostage was his entire company. Elias slammed his phone onto the boardroom table. The VCs were staring at him, the sea of red lights on the screen reflecting in their expensive glasses. A minor technical hurdle, Elias lied, forcing a smile. The legacy system is resisting the new integration protocols. We'll need 24 hours to bypass it. The lead VC stood up. Elias, we're buying a functional logistics network, not a fixer-upper. Our technical due diligence team is flying in tomorrow morning. If that board isn't all green when they land, this deal is dead. They walked out. Elias was alone with the catastrophic mess he had created. He called Jax into the office. The young IT director looked ready to vomit. Can we brute force the override? He demanded. No, he whispered. I tried. It's encrypted with the polymorphic key. It changes every minute. If we try to force it too many times, the system will initiate a data purge protocol. It will wipe the servers clean to protect the intellectual property. Elias felt the room spin. Sandra hadn't just locked the door, she'd rigged it with explosives. He thought she had to bluff it, and he was bluffing her. He was a gambler, and he was doubling down. The doorbell rang at 11:30 a.m. Sandra was in the middle of a Zoom call with the PTA president, finally volunteering for a committee she'd avoided for years. Through the peephole, she saw 3 men in expensive suits blocking her sunlit porch. Elias's legal attack dogs. She finished her call, grabbed a lukewarm cup of coffee, and opened the door. "Can I help you?" The lead lawyer, a man named Sterling who specialized in corporate intimidation, didn't smile. "Miss Vance, we're here on behalf of Apex Solutions. We have reason to believe you're actively engaging in corporate sabotage and unlawfully withholding intellectual property." He thrust a manila envelope toward her. "This is a cease and desist, alongside a notice of intent to sue for damages totaling $50 million. Unless you provide the override codes immediately, we will file this within the hour and move to freeze your personal assets." Sandra didn't take the envelope. She took a sip of her coffee, looking over the rim of the mug at them. "Mr. Sterling, you seem confused," Sandra said calmly. "According to the redundancy notice Elias sent me at 4:03 a.m. yesterday, I am a former employee with no ties to the company. The system isn't failing because I'm attacking it. It's failing because its authorized administrator was removed without a succession plan." She leaned against the doorframe. "Furthermore, if you actually read the Atlas Protocol's architecture documentation, which I'm sure you didn't, you'd know that any attempt at a brute force bypass by unauthorized personnel accelerates the defense protocols. By sending Jax in there to poke around, Elias didn't fix the problem. He started a 12-hour countdown to a total system wipe." Sterling's steely demeanor cracked. "A what?" "You're not here to sue me, Mr. Sterling. You're here because Elias is terrified. Tell him the price just went up. He has until sundown." She closed the door gently in their faces. Elias was pacing in his office, sweating through his Egyptian cotton shirt. The VCs were in the conference room next door, getting increasingly restless as the red lights on the dashboard multiplied. Sterling called from his car. "She's not budging, Elias, and she mentioned a 12-hour countdown to a system wipe. Is that real?" Elias dropped the phone. A wipe. Sandra hadn't just locked the door, she'd rigged the building to self-destruct. Before he could spiral further, his assistant, pale-faced, knocked on his door. "Mr. Thorne? The lead investor, Mr. Tanaka, just received an email. He wants to see you. Now." Elias walked into the conference room like a man walking to the gallows. Tanaka was staring at his tablet. "Elias," Tanaka said, voice dangerously quiet. "Care to explain this?" He turned the tablet around. It was an email from an anonymous encrypted address. Subject: Due diligence alert, Apex Solutions Logistics Network. Dear Mr. Tanaka, regarding your pending acquisition, be advised that the Atlas network is not an autonomous asset. It is a dependent system requiring biometric authentication from its architect, Sandra Vance, whom Mr. Thorne recently terminated to avoid paying her severance in equity. The current system failures are not technical glitches. They are the beginning of a catastrophic dependency cascade. You are buying a car with no engine and a driver who just threw away the keys. It was signed, a concerned stakeholder. Sandra. She had gone over his head. "Is this true?" Tanaka demanded. "Did you fire the only person who can run this thing just to screw her out of her equity?" Elias stammered. "It's a gross simplification.
Sandra is a disgruntled former employee trying to blackmail us. It sounds like she's the only one telling the truth. Tanaka stood up. Fix this, Elias, today, or we pull the funding and sue you for misrepresentation. Elias was cornered. The lawyers failed. The VCs knew the truth. He had hours before the system wiped itself and his company became worthless. He went down to the basement server room, a place he hadn't visited in years. The air was freezing, filled with the deafening hum of fans keeping millions of dollars of hardware cool. Jax was at the main console, looking like he hadn't slept in 2 days. Status, Elias barked. It's getting worse, Jax said, his voice trembling. The Rotterdam hub is fully offline. We're losing about $1 million an hour in shipping delays. And sir, the countdown. It's real. 8 hours to data purge. Break it, Elias ordered. Sir? Physically break it. Bypass the software authentication. Pull the drives if you have to. We own the hardware. Do whatever it takes to stop that countdown. Jax hesitated. Mr. Thorne, that's incredibly dangerous. Sandra designed Atlas to interpret physical tampering as a hostile act. The countermeasures. Do it! Elias screamed, grabbing Jax by the shoulder. I don't care about countermeasures. I am the CEO, and I am ordering you to rip this thing apart until it works. Trembling, Jax opened the main server rack housing the core of the Atlas system. He reached for the primary biometric scanner module, intending to hot wire past it. His screwdriver touched the casing. Instantly, the room plunged into darkness. Red emergency lights began strobing. A robotic, synthesized voice echoed through the chamber. Physical breach detected. Protocol Omega initiated. Halon fire suppression system active in T-30 seconds. All personnel evacuate immediately. The heavy magnetic locks on the server room doors slammed shut with a deafening clang. They were trapped. While Elias was screaming in a locked red flashing room, Sandra was sitting in the bleachers of her daughter Lily's field hockey practice. It was a Tuesday afternoon. For 15 years, Tuesday afternoons had been reserved for the weekly Global Operations Sync, a grueling 2-hour call where Elias would nitpick her team's metrics while I tried to mute the background noise of my kids coming home from school. Today, my phone was in my purse, silenced. The sun was warm on her face. She watched Lily sprint across the field, laughing with a teammate. She hadn't realized how tall Lily had grown. A knot in her chest, one she hadn't realized was permanent, began to loosen. She had spent a decade and a half terrified of losing her job because she thought her family depended on that specific paycheck, that specific title. She realized now they didn't need the VP title. They needed her. She thought about Elias, probably losing his mind right now. She felt a profound absence of guilt. He had tried to steal her past to finance his future. He had underestimated the fury of a mother whose sacrifices were thrown back in her face as baggage. Her phone buzzed relentlessly in her bag. She ignored it. The consulting fee wasn't just about the money anymore. It was a tax on 15 years of missed field hockey practices. And the taxman was finally collecting. The halon gas didn't deploy at T-1 second. The system stopped. The red light settled into a steady, menacing glow. The synthesized voice spoke again. Physical threat neutralized. System locked. Manual override required. The magnetic locks on the doors disengaged with a hiss. Elias and Jax stumbled out into the hallway, gasping for air they hadn't actually lost, terrified by the near-death experience Sandra had engineered. Jax was done. He threw his access badge on the floor. I'm quitting. I'm not dying for your IPO. Elias, she's smarter than you. She's smarter than all of us. Just pay her. Elias was alone in the hallway, shivering in the cold air leaking from the server room. He was beaten. His lawyers were useless, his investors were furious, his staff was mutinying, and his own building had just tried to suffocate him. He pulled out his phone. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely dial. He called Sandra. She answered on the first ring this time. The background noise was cheerful. Kids shouting, a whistle blowing. "Did you enjoy the Halon demonstration, Elias?" Sandra asked pleasantly. "I always thought that was a nice touch for physical intruders." "Okay," Elias whispered, his voice broken. "I'll sign the consulting agreement. The money, the retraction, all of it. Just turn it back on." "I'm afraid the price has changed, Elias," Sandra said, her voice hardening into diamond. "What? Why? You said—" "That was before you sent thugs to my doorstep to threaten the mother of my children. That was before you tried to physically assault my life's work." She paused, letting the silence
Stretch until Elias was whimpering. The money is the same. The retraction is the same. But now there's a third condition. You want the system back online before the VCs walk? You're going to have to ask me nicely, publicly. The emergency company-wide Zoom call was scheduled for 4 p.m. The invite list included every employee, the board of directors, and the furious venture capitalists led by Mr. Tanaka. The screen showed Elias sitting in his massive office chair, looking small. His tie was loosened, his hair disheveled. He looked like a man recording proof of life in a bunker. Sandra joined the call precisely on time. Her camera feed was crisp. She was sitting in her sunny kitchen, a half-empty mug of tea casually in front of her. She looked relaxed, healthy, and terrifyingly serene. There were 400 participants, but the silence was absolute. "Go ahead, Elias," Sandra said, her voice clear through the speakers of hundreds of laptops. "We're listening." Elias swallowed hard, looking off camera to Tanaka, who was sitting in the corner of the room like an executioner. I called this meeting to address the ongoing system failures. Contrary to my previous statements, these failures are not due to sabotage. They are the result of a critical administrative oversight caused by the wrongful termination of Sandra Vance. He paused. It wasn't enough. "And?" Sandra prompted gently. Elias closed his eyes. "And I personally apologize to Sandra for the termination, for the defamatory statements made against her professional reputation, and for the actions of my legal team today. We recognize her as the sole architect of the Atlas Protocol and acknowledge that we cannot operate without her expertise." Sandra took a slow sip of her tea. "Thank you, Elias." That sounded almost sincere. "My lawyers just sent over the final agreement. Once the wire transfer clears and the retraction is posted to the company homepage, I'll come in." She ended the call, leaving 399 people staring at a broken CEO. Sandra arrived at Apex Solutions at 5:30 p.m. She didn't wear her usual navy power suit. She wore dark jeans, a silk blouse, and a pair of comfortable loafers. She wasn't an employee afraid of being fired anymore. She was an expensive consultant doing them a favor. The lobby was tense. Security guards, who usually barely glanced at her, stood up straighter. The receptionist, a young woman who would always like Sandra, whispered a terrified, "Go get him," as Sandra breezed past the turnstiles without a badge. She took the elevator up to the C-suite. The air up here usually smelled of ambition and expensive cologne. Today, it reeked of fear. She walked straight past Elias's assistant and into his office.
Elias was sitting at his desk, staring at his phone. Tanaka was standing by the window watching the city lights. The crypto transfer is complete. 500,000, Elias mumbled, not looking up. The retraction is live on the website. Just fix it. Sandra placed her laptop on his mahogany desk, right on top of a stack of panicked reports. Not yet, she said. I need to be physically connected to the main server cord to input the biometric handshake. You're coming down with me, Elias. Elias paled. Why? Because the server room is still under lockdown from the Halon incident. I need 2 executive-level clearances to override the physical door seals before I can even get to the console to stop the data purge countdown. You're the only other executive left. She smiled thinly. We built this together, Elias. We should save it together. The walk to the basement was a silent funeral procession. Elias, Sandra, and Tanaka, who insisted on observing, descended into the cool depths of the building. They arrived at the Halon-scarred server room door. The red lights were still pulsing, a steady heartbeat counting down the death of the company. On 3, Sandra said. They both pressed their hands to the external scanners. The heavy magnetic locks disengaged with a groan. They stepped inside. The air was freezing. The hum of the servers was deafening. Sandra walked to the main console, the glowing brain of the Atlas protocol. Okay, Sandra yelled over the noise. I'm initiating the biometric handshake now. Once I'm in, the green lights come back on. She placed her palm on the scanner. A blue light swept across her skin. The central screen flashed, identity confirmed. Vance, Sandra, Level 1 Administrator. The red ambient lighting in the room turned white. On the dashboard above them, the sea of red error indicators began to slowly turn green, one by one. Elias let out a breath that was almost a sob. He was saved. The IPO could proceed tomorrow. He had survived. And then the scorpion stung. Elias pulled out his phone and tapped a pre-written message. He looked at Sandra, his old arrogance flooding back. Thanks, Sandra. You did great. Unfortunately, my legal team found a loophole. Since you accessed the system after being terminated, you technically committed a felony under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. The consulting agreement was signed under duress. It's void. The server room door opened behind them. 2 large armed private security contractors stepped in, handcuffs visible on their belts. Arrest her for corporate espionage, Elias ordered, pointing a shaking finger at Sandra. The security guard stepped forward. Tanaka looked horrified. Sandra didn't move from the console. She didn't look surprised. She looked bored. You never could help yourself, could you, Elias? You always think you're the smartest person in the room because you're willing to lie the loudest. Cuff her, Elias screamed at the guards. Wait, Sandra said sharply, holding up a hand. Look at the main screen. Elias turned. The dashboard was green. The system was running. But in the center of the massive monitor, a new window had opened. It was playing a video file. It was the security footage from the server room, recorded just hours earlier. It showed Elias grabbing Jax, screaming at him to rip this thing apart, followed by the Halon system triggering and Elias shrieking in terror. Then the screen changed. It began scrolling through documents, not code, emails. From Elias Turn to competitor CEO. Subject, the Sandra problem solved. From Elias Turn to offshore bank. Subject, hiding the Q3 losses. Every dirty secret, every fraudulent scheme, every plan to screw over his investors and employees was scrolling on the 4K screen in high definition. What is this? Elias gasped, clawing at the console. Turn it off. I can't, Sandra said. That's the dead man's switch. I added it yesterday morning after you fired me. If the biometric handshake isn't followed immediately by a secondary secret clearance code that only I know, Atlas assumes the administrator is being coerced. It automatically broadcasted your entire private outbox to the board of directors, all current investors, and the SEC. She turned to Tanaka. Mr. Tanaka, I believe your due diligence team has everything they need now. Tanaka looked from the damning screen to Elias, his face hardening into stone. He pulled out his phone. Security, Tanaka barked at the guards, who were about to arrest Sandra. Stand down. Your target has changed. Detain Mr. Turn until federal authorities arrive. I'm pressing charges for securities fraud. Elias was screaming as the guards, the very ones he had hired, dragged him out of his own server room. His cries echoed down the concrete hallway until the elevator doors cut them off. Sandra stood alone in the humming room with Tanaka. The screen above them was finally, completely green, save for the loop of Elias's crime still playing in the center. Tanaka let out a long sigh. He looked at Sandra with a mixture of respect and profound terror. Miss Vance, Tanaka said, bowing slightly, that was extraordinary. On behalf of the investment group, I apologize. We had no idea. Now you do, Sandra said simply, closing her laptop. The IPO is obviously postponed, Tanaka said, rubbing his temples. Elias is finished. We need an interim CEO immediately, someone who knows this company inside and out, someone who can stabilize the ship. He looked at her imploringly. Name your price, Sandra. Equity, salary, control, whatever you want. Just take the chair. It was everything she had worked 15 years for. The ultimate vindication. The corner office. The power. Sandra looked at her watch. It was 6:45 p.m. If she left now, she could make it home in time to have dinner with Lily and
Sam before they retreated to their rooms for homework. She thought about the missed recitals, the delayed vacations, the constant grinding stress of carrying Elias's incompetence on her back. No thank you, Mr. Tanaka, Sandra said. Tanaka was stunned. But you won. It's yours. I already have what's mine, Sandra said, patting her purse where her phone, loaded with her new consulting fee, sat. You have a functional system. My consulting contract stipulates that I will train Elias's replacement on how to maintain it. You can send me candidates next week. She walked toward the door, stepping out of the cold server room into the warmer hallway. Where are you going? Tanaka asked, bewildered. Sandra looked back over her shoulder, a genuine, free smile on her face for the first time in years. I'm going home. I have baggage to attend to. She walked out of the building, past the stunned security guards, into the evening air. She didn't look back at the tower of glass and steel she had built. She just got in her car and drove toward the suburbs, finally, permanently offline. The week following Elias's arrest was a surreal blur of headlines and subpoenas. Apex Solutions stock cratered, then stabilized as the board announced Tanaka as interim CEO. Elias was out on bail, housebound, his assets frozen, facing decades in federal prison for securities fraud and corporate espionage. Sandra watched it all from her living room sofa, folded laundry piled around her. It felt like watching a movie she'd seen before. Her bank account balance was swollen with the cryptocurrency transfer, $500,000 that felt less like income and more like reparations. Tanaka called daily. He was polite, desperate, and deferential. We need you to vet the new CTO candidate, Sandra. No one else understands the architecture. Send over the resumes, Mr. Tanaka. I'll review them between my daughter's math tutoring and dinner. She was true to her word. She remained an external consultant. She denied every request to step back into the building. She had won her war. She had destroyed the tyrant, secured her finances, and reclaimed her time with her children. Yet late at night, when the house was quiet, Sandra didn't sleep. She sat in her home office, staring at her personal laptop, watching the real-time data stream from the Atlas protocol that she still secretly mirrored. It was running perfectly. Too perfectly. Jax, the young IT director who had nearly been gassed in the server room, was now the acting head of department. He was smart, terrified of making mistakes, and practically worshipped Sandra. 2 weeks into the transition, Jax requested a secure video call with Sandra. He looked pale. "Sandra, I've been auditing the logs from the crisis day to prepare for the new CTO handover. And there are anomalies in the timestamp data, deep in the kernel logs. The system lockout, the Rotterdam hub failure, the payment processing crash. According to the logs, those subroutines initiated at 3:55 a.m. on Sunday." Sandra didn't blink. "So?" "Elias didn't send your redundancy notice until 4:03 a.m. The system started shutting down 8 minutes before you were officially fired." Jack's voice dropped to a whisper. "And the dead men switch? The protocols to scrape Elias's emails and construct that SEC packet. Those processes started running 3 weeks ago, long before he threatened you." He stared at her through the screen, his hero worship curdling into suspicion. "Sandra, Atlas didn't react to Elias firing you. It seems like Atlas was waiting for it." Sandra set her mug down slowly. The silence stretched until Jax began to fidget. "You're a good engineer, Jax. Better than I gave you credit for." "What does that mean?" "Do you know why Elias hired me 15 years ago? Before Apex was anything. My background wasn't just in logistics. It was in predictive behavioral modeling for high-frequency trading platforms. I didn't just build systems that moved boxes. I built systems that anticipated human greed." Jax stared blankly. "Atlas isn't just a shipping program, Jax. It's a psychological profile engine. For years, I fed it every email, every financial decision, every erratic 3 a.m. demand Elias ever made. I taught Atlas to build a predictive model of its CEO.